All right, what's up? Adis here, back with another video. If you're techie and nerdy like me, this one's going to be good. This is about iPhones and messaging and Android phones, etc. So let's get right into it. And today it is November 23, 2023, right? So last week, finally, Apple announced that they're going to incorporate RCS messaging in their messaging app. Now, I say finally because it's been like so many years where Android has already had this. And Apple has purposely chosen to not put it in. But let's just describe what it is first, okay? So when you're on an iPhone and or an Android phone, you message each other across iPhone and Android phones. That the messages are not good. It's like bare bones, all that stuff. So RCS is going to allow you to send high resolution photos, send high resolution videos, see typing indicators. You can text over Wi-Fi and data. You can do reactions. You can jump in and out of group chats, all that cool stuff. And you're like, oh, that sounds just like iMessage. Well, yeah, it's very similar to iMessage. It's just like WhatsApp and Telegram and Signal, right? It's an instant messaging features, but now standard across everybody, regardless what the phone, what app, period. So that's like the simple way to describe it. It's gonna be better for everybody, right? So it doesn't matter what phone you have, what app you have, right? You'll be able to do all these things similar to iMessage, an instant messaging experience for everybody, regardless of the phone. So they announced it last week, and they're gonna finally put it in next year by 2024, they say. So who knows? They could wait until freaking the last day of the fucking year. So we'll see what happens. But what's interesting is how long they took, and the fact that like somebody pointed out, it's like, oh, Apple's gonna fix messaging between platforms. Like, no, like they purposely were choosing not to. It was actually the European Union is kind of cracking down on certain things. Like they don't want certain companies to kind of like hold things back, right, and kind of gatekeep or be a little anti-consumer and stuff. This is why the current iPhones all have USB Type-C. That's been a standard for years, and Apple has actually been putting that stuff in their other products like iPads and their computers and MacBooks and stuff, right? USB-C. That's been standard for all other companies for years now. And now, recently also, the European Union has been cracking down on the messaging thing, where they want to just make messaging better for everybody because a standard exists, okay? And Apple has not chosen to put that in, which is RCS, the new standard. It's not even new, but it's new for, I guess, new for Apple. But anyway, that is the simple whatever part, or the basic part of this video. So we're gonna get in depth with the history and what it is and what's going on and how we got to this point. So if you want to hear some more, let's continue. So RCS stands for Rich Communication Service. Okay. Now this was actually invented, I took some notes here, in 2008. So we have the GSMA, Global Systems for Mobile Association. Okay, they have been working on this in 2008, and actually in 2012 Samsung implemented this into their phones. 2012, that's over 11 years ago. Now Samsung, what they did is they took that, they're the only ones, they took that and they had their own app, right? So you got a Samsung phone and you had their Samsung app, and you can have these features: typing indicators, high resolution videos, high res pictures, instant messaging, all the cool stuff, right? But it was only on their phone with their app. I guess kind of like what Apple has been doing, but they have their own thing, instant messaging with iMessage, right? And then finally, so Samsung was did it in 2012 in Europe, and then finally in 2015 they were doing it here, okay? Again, that's still a long time ago. And here we are with Google. So what's interesting with Google is that back then, how's the lighting here? Lighting's okay. All right, so back then, besides Samsung, all these companies, well, kind of with Samsung, they would have their own apps, all right? Sony had their own messaging app, and Motorola, and I guess who else was making phones then? HTC, Google had their phones too, and they had like whatever messaging, and they actually started to work on their own thing. But anyway, back then, all these Android phones besides Samsung had their own app that didn't have any special features. Just bare bones, basic SMS and MMS, right? SMS is small message service. MMS is multimedia message service, and then RCS is rich communication service. So again, that's the newest one. And Google was seeing what Apple was doing with their iMessage, right? And they're like, hey, we need to make our own app. We need to try something. We want people to go and use our app and blah, 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 right? So then they made Hangouts, all right, Google Hangouts, which was good. But the thing is that you had to have a Gmail. You log in with your Gmail, and then other people had to have that app and also put their Gmail in, and then you can instant message with them that way. And eventually they're like, hey, let's also put SMS and MMS in it. And then they started to push that and put that as the default app on their phones specifically. They were making, what, Nexus phones at the time, right? And the problem with that is it didn't work well together. You would have separate threads. You would have people using chats with their Gmail, and then if they decided to use their regular phone, they're in an iPhone, you're going to get a separate conversation, two separate conversation threads if they're using their Gmail versus their phone number. And like on Hangouts, you can kind of combine it, but it was kind of clunky, whatever. So they gave up on that, and they tried to create another app called Allo, and that launched with another app. It was a duo. Sorry, it was two apps. It was called Allo and Duo, right? They launched together, and people are like, "This is it! Google finally is going to create their great, an awesome messaging app, and it's going to work like iMessage." And everybody was kind of hyped about it, and it launched, and it literally launched without the ability to send MMS and SMS messages. Like, that was such an obvious, like, off the bat, like, disaster. I was like, how on earth can you get people to use this thing if you still have to use your other app to send messages to people on an iPhone or just, somebody who's not using the app? So the problem is to get somebody, it's a lot harder to get somebody else to use another app. Okay, you got to tell somebody to download, right? It's a headache, right? Everybody's already using their thing. Everybody's already using WhatsApp and Telegram and their iMessage app. So that bombed instantly. Duo hung around as a video chat app. Now it's called Google Meet, so that's cool. So then finally Google's like, you know what, F that, it's not working. We're going to just create a basic SMS MMS app. We're going to work on that. We're going to make sure it works great. We'll make sure it's default on all our phones with their Pixel phones. So that was cool, and it worked cool. It looked nice. And then as time went on, they finally in 2018, if I got that right, yes, Google finally in 2018. Remember, Samsung already had RCS in their specific app in 2015. So Google finally in 2018, they put RCS in their app, okay? And they started making that standard for other manufacturers. So Motorola is like, hey, you know what? Don't worry about your own app. Use our messaging app because it's going to have RCS. And then Sony, and then, what else is out there? OnePlus, and even eventually Samsung was having the Google Messages app on their phone, okay? But they still had their own, all right? So you had both on there, and I guess you let the people choose, right? Give people options. That's good. So anyway, as it grew and it grew and it grew in popularity, then Google worked with more service providers and more companies. We're like, hey, you know what? We have this on our phone. We gave it to all these other companies and all these other phones, and they worked the service providers like, hey, turn on RCS for everybody. All right, enough of this nonsense. Enough of this. Get a specific app. We already got one app, and everybody's already on it, and it does everything. It does regular SMS, MMS, and now it does RCS. Okay, and for some reason, it was a little pushback. It was annoying because service providers like AT&T and T-Mobile and Verizon, like, they had the technology of RCS, but they were using it kind of like what Apple does, where they were using it as a way to keep their customers, right? So you have Verizon with their Verizon messaging app, and then you have T-Mobile, like, yeah, you have T-Mobile's like, yeah, you have RCS. I'm not even 100% sure if it was T-Mobile, but companies were doing this. I think it was, where it's like T-Mobile's like, yeah, we do RCS, but RCS only works if it's another T-Mobile company. Another T-Mobile phone or another person using T-Mobile service. And Google's like, yo, what the hell are you guys doing? We have this thing that works for everybody, and you're over here breaking it up, and you guys don't want to work together. So finally, Google kind of like overrided that and just kind of leapfrogged them. Like, all right, you guys aren't going to set this up for everybody so we can all message together and it works great. Doesn't matter what phone you have. Then they're like, yo, we're just going to create our own service. So then they were able to, in their app, update it where it would just revert all the messaging through their servers and skip the phone service providers. All right. So then in their app, the app updated, and bam, that was it. 2018, probably a little bit more after that because it was annoying with these phone providers, like just being really ridiculous on it. So I would say maybe like in 2020, no, probably before that, probably in 2019, I would say. So now you have RCS messaging, basically instant messaging capability on every single Android phone, regardless of the company. Everybody has this ability to send instant messaging. All right, you don't need another app. It just came default on your phone. You don't need WhatsApp. You don't need Telegram. You don't need nothing. It automatically comes in with your Android Messages app, okay? And then we have Samsung over there who has their own app. And finally, in the last year or so, Samsung is now coming default with the Google messaging app. So now it doesn't even matter what phone you have. Samsung phone, Google phone, Motorola phone, any Android phone, standard. They have RCS with the app that has, and it's great, it works. So here we have here we have Apple. Apple, it's so crazy because Apple knows that one of the main selling points for their phone is iMessage. And people are like, yeah, you know what? That phone's cool, but I can't give up iMessage. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to stick here because all my friends have iPhones and, because iMessage. And Apple knows that. So they purposely, even though these companies have been doing this back since 2018, 5 years ago, Apple's like, you know what? I know there's a new standard, okay? And everybody's using it. But you know what? We're not going to do it. We're not going to put that in our phone because if once people start realizing that you can get iMessage-like experiences on another phone for those who are stuck on iMessage, once you realize you can get the same experience, a very similar experience on another phone with texting, that is one less reason to stay on it. And they're like, we don't want our people to leave. I don't know what the number is going to be. I mean, there's people that have iPhones because of other reasons on top of that. Maybe it's FaceTime, or maybe it's just like, you have a subscription services to something, maybe the music or something, and not all that stuff is on other phones. Some of that stuff is actually, but not all that stuff is. So there's some people that, there's more reasons than just that. Maybe they just like the phone in general. But there's some people like, hey, I like other phones, but I can't be without iMessage. So people don't realize, or people think that like, it's Android's, the reason messages are green and they don't have these other features like iMessage, people think it's because of the Android phone user. No, it's because Apple specifically, on purpose, has been choosing to not implement instant messaging features on their phone this whole time. It's also green on purpose. They know that green is not pleasing to the eyes, all right? People don't like pleasing to the eyes, right? It's not visually appealing, okay? It's not green, the slime green, like Drake has in his songs all the time. Green is not visually appealing. So it kind of gives, specifically girls, not all girls, but some girls, like, ew, you don't have an iPhone, it's green. And they're like, or kids, right? Or the fact that like, what's the stat? I think it's like 87% of like kids have iPhones, and a lot of it, almost all of it, I'm assuming, a big part of it is because of iMessage, and Apple knows that, and what's happening is because the consumers don't know really, all they see is, oh, this message is green, I don't like it, and if they had an iPhone, it would be blue. So then they blame the person who has an Android phone instead of an iPhone. When it's really, they should be blaming Apple. They should be saying, Apple, why is this green? Change your effing color to something else. It doesn't have to be, they don't both have to be blue. I mean, by default on an Android phone, RCS messages is like a darker blue, and then the regular messages between them or us, right, to an iPhone user is a lighter blue. So either color is fine. Neither color is ugly, right? It's perfectly cool, but Apple purposely makes the messages to Android phones ugly, okay, slime green. And it's just so interesting how iPhone users don't complain to Apple, because Apple is doing this on purpose. They're choosing to not do this. So whatever, I said that multiple times, but I hope you understand. I hope you got some information there. Like, comment, subscribe, share, and I guess that's it. So hopefully Apple gets on this quickly. And again, if Android phone users really cared about iMessage and the fact that it's green or something, they would just get an iPhone. But Android phone users don't care. They get the phone they like. That's it. Okay. If you have RCS messaging, instant messaging capabilities, awesome. If you don't, whatever. It's the iPhone users that have the poor experience with the green messages, and it bothers them. So they end up kind of being like the bullies, and they end up being like salesmen for Apple. They'll be like, oh, you don't have an iPhone? Ew. Oh, you should get an iPhone. It's very childish. It's very silly. When this whole time years ago, all these iPhone users should have been like, Apple, what the hell are you doing? Can you finally catch up to everybody else? Can you finally do what everybody else is doing? Why are we waiting for you years to implement something that everybody else already has? My guess is they're gonna put RCS in. It's gonna take them, I don't know, I'm sure it's going to be late into the year, right? I mean, the more they push it back, the better for them, I guess, in terms of what they're trying to do with their incentive of keeping people on iPhones and stuff. And I'm pretty sure, I think they already announced that they're going to keep it green, because they know they're going to keep it green, even though it's an RCS message. They're going to keep it green as if it's an SMS MMS message, because they know that it helps them cell phones. So I can go on rant more and more, but I'm just going to leave it at that. So hope you found it interesting. I already said like, comment, subscribe, and stuff. Leave a comment, and I guess that's it. Thanks for watching, and peace.